Hi everyone, it's Natalie here. Welcome to my channel. Somebody's calling me. Okay, so for my sanity, I just went and turned the phone off and I'm just going to carry right on. So, because otherwise this is going to go crazy. And I switched my phone off because that's just how I roll and that's how it's been. So, I wanted to come on and make a couple of videos today. First of all, because I've been so I've needed to really wrap my head around some practices, which I've now started to do. And as I'm doing that, I am feeling a lot better about those practices, and I'm needing less time to devote to them. And so I feel like I have now more time to come back to this and to these practices. So, yeah, those of you who follow me on Instagram know that I have been working with the runes just starting this year. So I have to start this by saying I have been in resistance to the runes for most of my adult life. I felt a dissonance and yet a draw to them. Some of it comes from having a bad experience. I had a terrible, I think I've talked about this before. I had a really bad experience with the runes when I was like 20, I think, 20, 21, somewhere in there, where they basically scared the crap out of me. I think I drew Hagalas and I was going through a really bad time. And the accuracy written in the description of what that rune meant and what I was experiencing at that moment were so similar, and it was really upsetting and distressing because I think what I really wanted at that time was hope. And instead what I got back was a mirror. It really scared me. And so I did what anyone with common sense would do, which is instead of, I was young, what can I do? I just never touched it again. And I think I gave those cards away or sold them, or so probably gave them away as quickly as I could because I just couldn't cope at that age. I just didn't have any maturity and I didn't have any skills, for dealing with the kind of things it brought up for me. It wasn't part of my path because of a lot of discomfort with where I could see a lot of neo-paganism going. And just the association between anything that's to do with Scandinavia and Germanic culture and Vikings, with like alt-right, racist groups, which I want no association with at all whatsoever. And for me, even touching runes, talking about them, acknowledging any kind of Scandinavian background, or Germanic background was scary, because I, again, want nothing to do with being associated with those groups. Plain and simple. And especially since Trump has been elected, and it seems to have brought out, for whatever reason, right? Because if you talk to normally very level-headed people who voted for Trump, they will tell you that they have no idea what that's about and it's not to do with what's going on and all of this. I live in St. Louis, so I know a lot of people who have voted for Trump. And it's hard to be with because of it's horrible to be with on many levels because of that association with alt-right, racist groups. I find it so horrifying that something that a spiritual tradition that was clearly calling to me, which I'm about to tell you more about for years, is something I was willing to ignore and put to one side because my desire to be loving and accepting of other groups that are not the same as me in any way, whatever that way is such that I didn't want to be associated with it. So that's kind of just to give a background, where some of that resistance comes from. And I was reminded of it again earlier this week. One of my favorite people on YouTube, who's not a part of the tarot community, but is totally part of the nerd community where, around runes and, ancient, anthropology, Scandinavian culture and history and so on. Arith Harger, his channel I'll link below. He's wonderful. And he did a great video earlier this week that he had to put up a community post about because he had to go through and eliminate so many comments from people who are just crazy, you know, and insane and want to associate anything to do with the runes, with weird, with Nordic culture, ancient Nordic culture and so forth, all to do with white supremacy and this, you know, basically neo-Nazi politics and so forth that I want no association with at all whatsoever, and which I utterly, utterly condemn. So I want to be 100% clear about my position before I even go into this. Do you see where I'm saying? This is exactly where I'm coming from. So, you know, those are things that hurt my heart and my soul on such a level that I hardly know how to speak about it. And I would almost rather just keep it private, except for that it feels like something that I want to share, if that makes sense. And then I realized, wow, why would I let a bunch of completely hateful assholes destroy the good that's involved there as well? Because I actually I'm finding that while the runes may be associated originally, this is going to be controversial, by the way, but I suppose depending on who you are, a lot of things I say could be controversial, hey? Let's be real. But I totally lost my train of thought. I don't even know where I was going to go with that. Oh, my perspective is that the runes, while they may have been discovered and introduced by that culture, right, by Scandinavian culture and Germanic culture, my experience of them is that they're not limited to that culture by any means. We obviously see them arising in other cultures around the world. It seems to have influenced a lot of other cultures around the world. I don't really know anything about Scandinavian folklore. I always thought Thor was kind of cool. That's about all I can say. Yeah, that's really it. So I got a hold of the Telluric Runes, which most of us are familiar with by now, I think, by Lunaria Gold. Oh, here's the book. This is pretty. Here we go. Great book, and the deck is exquisite. Oh, whoops, there we go. Yes, Anzus. Yeah, the deck is just exquisite. It's so beautifully made, and woo, hello, there goes the Wunyo. I mean, they're just amazing. So I started by working, you know, actually not with the deck, but with rune sightings. And I'm just showing you my tools in the time since here, because I think tools are good. The other thing I got, and again, this has been on my Instagram, is I got a set of runes in, and again with Anzus, in ruby, what is this, ruby kyanite? Yeah, Notala, Lagus, etc. Right? So I got these runes to work with, and this felt like the right stone for me to work with regards to these, just to begin with. Felt like just felt like the right stone. I also got a set in my other favorite, favorite stone. Probably my favorite stone, really, if I'm honest, which is fancy jasper or Indian jasper, Indian agate, depending on who you are. But they're not, I mean, they're okay. This isn't like the nicest jasper. There's all geese. It's all right. And I would really love these runes, and this set I would work with a lot more. But unfortunately, there is no, there are 2 Dagos runes and no Manas runes. So I had to let them kind of sit to one side. I am contemplating still calling the person that I bought them from and saying, like, any way you could send me, you know, I would send you back a Dagos for a Manas if you have one in this, you know. So I may do that because I really don't like that they're here and I'm not working with them. That feels weird. No pun intended. No pun intended there. Anyway, and then I've been working with 3 books. My favorite of the 3 is Living Runes by Gallina Krasskova. This is one that Nina had recommended. It is fantastic. I've also got, I've really become a fan of Freya Aswynn, or Aswynn, Power and Principles of the Runes, really good. And then this one was recommended by somebody in a review of another book that I was looking at getting. And then this person was like, no, if you and they really seem to know what they're talking about. And this is an excellent book. It's called Nordic Runes by Rhys Mountfort. And it is really, really good. So I've been working with these books. But to start with, the way that this really unfolded, and I'm going to start putting pictures up, I'm sure, as I'm talking, is that my whole life, since I've been like a kid and had any interest in runes, I started to recognize the symbols on the ground. So I'd be walking along someplace and be like, I'm sure that's a symbol of something. And I have a practice already anyway of when I go out and I go for walks, I look at the ground, I look at the path that I'm taking. What am I finding along my path? And I find that then the pavement, or literally, you know, like the pavement, the ground begins to offer up symbols and signs and information. And probably since at least 2011, 2011, 2012 is about when this started, like end of 2011, beginning of 2012. I began really deepening that dialogue. I was living in Chicago at the time, and I think I probably felt able to deepen that dialogue at that time because I was really isolated a lot socially. Even though I was working in a department, I was being ostracized in the department, so it was hard to really have much social, there weren't many people to be with or be around at that time. So I spent a lot of time alone and looking at the ground. I was also in like a really low place. But, it was a really good, it was beautiful. I mean, it was just beautiful. That was, the whole journey of that was really beautiful. And so, I became aware of runes then, although there were other symbols at that time that I was much more drawn to, or which seemed to be much more prevalent. And I decided, that if I was going to go ahead and look at runes and study runes, why not begin acknowledging them and see what happens? So I began looking at the ground specifically to see if any runes would appear. And I remember the first walk that I had, the first rune that I spotted was Othala, which is in depending on whose system you're using of the Elder Futhark, is the final rune. And at the beginning of the walk, interestingly, I got back to my house, and right before I got to my house was Fehu. So at the beginning of my walk, I found the end, the last rune, and at the end of my walk, the first. And then from that point onward, they all, most all of them have come about. I'm trying to remember which ones have not come about. I was up to a point keeping a really tight record of, I'm gonna have to pull my book out here, of which ones were showing up and which ones were not. So I made a little notebook that I could use to track my journey. Okay, so I just went back to look. So there are 3 runes that have not yet, that was so European of me, I guess, because we're talking about European things, because in Europe you count 1, 2, 3, right? Instead of 1, 2, 3. Anyway, the 3 that really have not come out yet. I feel like I can say that Perthro has at this point, although it's kind of iffy. But then that's kind of also the nature of that rune. But Yera from the second ayat has not yet come forward, which is weird because I see Kainas everywhere. And Kainas is like one half of Yera. Berkano has not shown up yet, and Ingus, no Ingus, at least not. I don't believe so. I'm pretty sure not. I may need to go back and revisit. I have gotten them, all of them, at some point with, through the use of decks, through the use of working with, with stone, rune stones and so forth, and with my deck. Really, I just have the one deck. And the 2 sets of runes, but really just the one set of runes because of, So, little by little, every one of the runes except for those three have shown up on the pavement. And usually there's like a really fascinating story to go with it. So like, you know, they don't just show up by themselves, and it's never by happenstance. Some of the ones that have really given me an incredible experience include when Tiwaz made its first appearance. It was at a moment where I was just kind of running out of strength. And feeling really bogged down and exhausted, and just like, I don't think I can carry, I don't know if I can carry on. I don't know if I can move forward and do what I need to do with my end of life clients. The job was becoming very energetically draining. And I was just at that point, even just taking the dog for a 1 block, radius walk every morning so that I could just get myself in the car and get out the door. And that rune showed up in a series with a few others. It was there with a knot, and I'll have to put that one up here somewhere. But I found this knot on the pavement, and that knot really felt like it was telling me, hold it together. Come on, hold it together. In a way that was like being given a hug and then being told, tough love. Get on, come on, you've got to do this. Honor yourself, honor your clients, honor your work and your integrity. So as I got that message from that formation there, the next thing I saw, literally I turned the corner and there was Tiwaz. And it felt like, come on, woman, you're a warrior, you can do this. And it's not so much just, the simplicity of these symbols, by themselves doesn't feel like much, right? It really doesn't, this doesn't feel like there's that much to it, right? There's right at the top, right where I could get it, Tiwaz. That doesn't seem like much. We see arrows everywhere, but when it's made, like I'm sure I'm shown it or will be, when it's made of tree branches and sticks on the pavement like that, in a way where you literally, it's in your sight of, line of sight, in such a way that you cannot miss it. And it's, it's about the timing. It's about the way that it shapes everything. It's just remarkable. And as that journey went on, I think that was the same morning, I also then saw a dagas, a really beautiful dagas, and an algis. And so like the collective message felt really loving and positive and encouraging, and come on, this is for the good of everyone. We're all in this together, and you're going to be safe and protected, and, don't worry. And the runes, I don't know how to describe them. They don't feel like, they definitely are alive. I definitely experience them as being alive. I definitely experience them as being very, they're sentient for sure. They're sentient. And I feel like the actual symbol, it's just a quick way to communicate an energy, a dynamic, some information, a message, any one of those things or all of those things at a particular moment, and all of the circumstances surrounding it are important along with it. It's kind of naming a moment in time with, it's so hard to describe. I don't know how to describe it. The simplicity of the lines, in a rune are deceptive, because they don't belie the complexity that simple symbol is describing. I hope that makes sense. I know it's really hard to name it and verbalize it. And it feels so ancient and so old, and so much like a part of the fabric of who we are as human beings on the planet, that I feel like and I have not done this yet, although I think it would be fascinating to do, maybe that could be something to do, would be to look at look at different spiritual traditions, old spiritual traditions from virtually every culture, including cave. I think I think there was a video on Arith Harger's channel about this, about finding runes in caves in France. I mean, I think you'd find, we see them, we see the beginnings of them, we see them incorporated into different cultures all over the world. When I look at Tibetan iconography and, symbols that are important to Tibetans in their, in Bun and in Nyingma particularly,
Mm-hmm.
which is the older form of Buddhism and Tantra in Tibet, it's there too. It's there. It's there. So I don't feel like it's limited to Europe. It's definitely not. I feel like when you look at Asian script, you find elements of it there too. I haven't spent enough time with it. Probably, I don't read Asian language. My limitations are that as a Buddhist, we had to know certain. I learned enough to be able to know certain words and symbols and so forth and know what I was looking at and find them familiar in Korean and in Chinese, and that's it. That's all I know. And it's very, 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 very limited. Same with Sanskrit, same with now with Tibetan. And Tibetan is the most fresh because I look at it every day now. So yeah, that's just to say, I feel like we see it everywhere. I feel like if we were to go and look more at Arabic cultures, to look more at Persian culture, anywhere along that Silk Road route, I think you would find it, and find those connections. And my sense is that you would find it then too all over Africa. So that also leads me to wonder about Mesoamerica, South America, the Pacific, the South Pacific. I'm just, I'm really curious. I think it's in other words, I think that the energies that talk to us through the symbols of the runes are energies that belong to the earth. I don't actually feel like they belong to a specific culture. I think that they are transhuman and transcultural, and that we've learned how to communicate with them in the West through runic symbols, but that because that's the closest approximation that we've come to. I feel like I'm coming into contact with similar energies and ideas, concepts, and so forth through. I feel like there's not a huge separation between them and a lot of what I find in different Buddhist cultures as well. So, yeah, I'm curious. I'm really curious. Not only that, but like looking at a rune like Wunyo, I thought I just had it here. Yes. You look at this. This was a symbol that we used to have on Christmas trees with a gabo through the bottom, right? You know what I mean? There's a lot. And we know that Christianity borrowed so many things from paganism anyway, right? We all know this. So, yeah, anyway, this is becoming long, but this is just to say, yeah, that's what I've gleaned from working with them over time. And where people, I think too, it is also because they've been introduced through Nordic culture and Nordic mythology and history, learning and knowing that has now become more interesting because I've connected with these energies so strongly, or rather acknowledged the connection with those energies, very strongly over the last few months. Yeah, they were always there, and I would always be like, oh, that's that one symbol that's like this, that's kind of like a letter, but it's not. you know, and then later on, like, wow, why do I see runes everywhere? Why are they everywhere? So there's something there. Probably ancestral, probably, you know, maybe genetic through that connection. But again, kind of like the way that we would say that everyone's psychic, it's just a, you know, or everybody has you know, I've been an artist most of my life, so I would also say everybody is an artist, everyone's creative. It's a matter of how do you express that creativity? How do you work with it? And what kind of a role does it play in your life? I would say that the same is true for runes. You know, that those energies are not limited to a particular time, place, or culture, but we've created this incredible energy field around that particular time, place, culture, you know, history, background, genetic connections, ancestral connections, etc. I hope that makes sense. So I'm now also very curious about that as well. So, because I still really don't know very much about any of that. I kind of am just like, I know there's a TV show called Ragnarok. I still had to ask Nina, like, what is that? I don't know what that is. I could have Googled it, but, you know, we were chatting and talking together. So I was just like, yeah, so what is that, by the way? Because I still don't know. And I'm still not going to watch it probably because I don't like to watch violent stuff on TV. And again, like I tended to associate Vikings and Scandinavian culture with a lot of violence, raping, pillaging, drinking heavily, you know, all the things that I'm so like not into at all. Like, guys, come on, you know, sitting around fires telling stories, I am all over that. Sitting under trees weaving shit, I'm all over that. You know, piecing out with some ravens or, you know, going on deep spiritual journeys and things, all over that. But, you know, that's not the part of that's not the part of that culture that tends to be highlighted, right? Yeah, like even TV shows like The Vikings, I just can't watch it. I don't want to know about this eagle thing where somebody's rib cage is opened up in their lungs, and I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I watched Hannibal, and I watched that other Hannibal Lecter movie. What was it? Silence of the Lambs. I've seen enough, man. I don't want to take in any more of that violence unnecessarily. There is no point. No point. So, but the other aspects of the culture that I'm fascinated by, you know, the literary aspects, the storytelling, I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by sunstones. You know, the minute somebody was like, "Oh yeah, we think it was this," you know, we think these lovely, you know, calcite crystals, you know, where you could see the sun on a cloudy day like today, might be how things were navigated. I'm fascinated by that. Utterly fascinated. The rest, not so much. Pretty landscapes, fjords, that's nice. I'm starting to like lose track of where I was headed with this. So I think the easiest thing might be to make some separate videos about specific runes and the experiences that I've had with them. I think so. So I started by telling you about how I met Tiwaz. So yeah, I think we'll go back and we'll just kind of work our way back through them, and I can make it kind of like rune story time. Hey, that works, right? Because like Vikings and like oral storytelling and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So I can just tell you a nice story about the runes. What do you think? I think that'll work. All right, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Am I like getting there, figuring it out? Okay, so more rune tales to come. Talk to you soon. Bye.